Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to this new episode of BHHSeries. My name is Aline, and I'm the Chief International Officer of Barcelona Health Hub. So today is the last episode before the holidays, before the summer. So it's very exciting. And we're going to talk about investment. So it's a topic that we wanted to address for a few weeks already, but we were waiting to find the right moment, and I think it's really the right moment. So a few weeks ago, like a week ago or so, they published the results of the investment, digital health investment for Q1 and Q2. So Q1 actually started very strong this year. It was actually the record year since forever. So if you look on the graph, you can see Q1 was very strong. And then COVID-19 happened. So we were not sure, like at first, like talking to a few investors, they didn't know what to do. Like some of them just stopped investment, like waiting to see what was happening. But the reality is that Q1, Q2, so first semester of 2020 was actually a record year overall. So there was still investment during Q2, and with even like the average of round reached like 25 million, which even was higher than the previous years. So very, very interesting outlook. So today I'm very pleased to be joined by different experts from the investment ecosystem. So we've got Gemma Estrada, which is investor of Rework, so a business angel community, and she's also the digital health and tech director at Ferrer, a pharma company from Barcelona. Then we've got Eugene Borukhovich, the chairman and COO of Your Health Coach, so a startup who've been through that, looking for investment those past weeks. So it was very interesting to hear from him what happened. And then we've got Steve Sunjan, who is partner of PHS Fund, so an investment fund based out of Amsterdam and investing in digital health. So today I want to discuss investment, the different forms of investment, and also pick their mind on what will the future of investment look like. Like this first semester, that was a record semester. Would it be the same? Can we expect 2020 to be a record year overall? Are things gonna change? So we're gonna discuss with each of them what they think about that. So first of all, we're gonna start with Gemma. Gemma, welcome. Very happy to have you here today.
Same thing. Good afternoon, Aline. Thank you.
Good afternoon. So we're going to talk a bit about business angel. So can we start? Can you tell us what is We Rock, please?
Sure. Okay, We Rock's purpose and reason to exist is to support entrepreneurial women. So, and there's many good reasons for that. If you look at the Crunchbase report just recently released in April, which looks into what happened in 2019, it turns out that only 3% of the business investment goes to women. Even if you combine VC investment in female-founded and mixed co-founded companies, it still only amounts to 9% of all investment. So considering that women represent between 30 and 40% of all entrepreneurs, a lot more needs to be done. So We Rock comes in here. We are a Barcelona group of women. We're all passionate about innovation. And we come from different fields across the industry, across sectors. We all have extensive professional experience. Some of us are company managers, others are entrepreneurs, others are businesswomen. And we're all committed to investing in women-led startups. So the woman may be either the founder or the co-founder or a member of the board. We don't become too strict about that. But that's what We Rock is. In a nutshell, we are scouters with criteria because the criteria stems from this great diversity in the composition of our group. We are friendly negotiators and we are loyal partners for female entrepreneurs.
Okay. And are you open for business?
Yes, we are. We're very open for business. I have to admit that COVID impacted us a little bit, right? So we usually tend to have like one deal flow every quarter. And although our enthusiasm remained untouched with this COVID issue and situation, we did have a little bit of an impact on our schedule. So we did skip the deal flow this past spring, but there's good news. And you're getting the premiere here today at Barcelona Health Hub. The next pitching session for We Rock will take place on September 21st. Applications are welcome until September 8th. And the email address is werockbarcelona@gmail.com. So this
Perfect.
usually works. We do have an internal bit of a selection. I'm sorry, I interrupted. I was going to say that before making it to the pitching session, there is a little bit of an internal selection. And the 5 startups that score higher in this internal selection process are the ones who get to pitch on the 21st of September.
Perfect. So we'll make sure to share that information. Thank you for giving us the premiere today. That's very exciting and very good news for all the women out there. So we'll share the information through the Barcelona Health Hub channels in the coming days. Thank you for that. So now it's open, and there's some women out there who are looking for investment. They're looking more for business angel money. Maybe why should they talk to you and not to other business angels?
All right, they should talk to us if they see it phase and they are innovative startups ready to scale fast. We require that they have got an MVP. That's true. But if they do not need all the money from one same investor, if they are happy that we team up with other investors in the same round, they should come to us because we are friendly. We accompany startups in a very friendly way. We are kind. And also because they get exposed to a great deal of experience. All the women in our group, in We Rock, we do share our experience very happily. And at the same time, this is a bi-directional road, right? We do learn from the entrepreneurs. We learn from them. We like to learn from the ecosystem because we like to contribute agility and flexibility that we learn from the startups to our own corporations. And this two-way road is usually very satisfactory for all the parts. So that's what differentiates us. We're kind, we're friendly companions, and we share. At the same time, we do learn, and that enriches the experience for both.
Fantastic. And so, Gemma, we mentioned at the beginning that you are not only investor in We Rock, but you also work for Ferrer, the pharma company. Yeah. You collaborate with startups, entrepreneurs over there, but in a different way. So can you tell us a bit more, like how the investment is different in those two entities?
Sure. Well, at Ferrer for Future is the corporate open innovation program at Ferrer, and this is focused only in digital health, while at We Rock, it's totally open. I mean, just to give you a couple of examples, recent investments have gone to the field of education, also the field of photonic sciences, but we're also interested in smart mobility and others. Ferrer for Future is only focused in digital health. Further, a second difference would be that at Ferrer, we do not take equity from the startups. The program, which is called Ferrer for Future, looks rather at conducting short-term pilots with the startups and then license the technology. So Ferrer does not invest in the company itself. Ferrer invests in the asset. So first, Ferrer kind of pays for the co-development process and finances the pilot study. Sometimes before getting to the pilot study, we need to pivot the startup solution to make sure that it is adapted to the Ferrer use case. So we also finance that bit of work. And then we reach an agreement for commercialization. And that's very different from what we do at We Rock.
Okay, fantastic. Well, Gemma, thank you very much. So now we're going to talk a bit with Eugene, the entrepreneur today. Eugene, welcome. Very happy to have you here with us today, all the way from the other side of the Atlantic. So
Yes,
Eugene, can you tell us
happy
more
to be
like,
here.
can you tell us a bit more like what is Your Coach Health?
Yep. Yeah, so first of all, hopefully it's temporary, and I'll see some of you guys in Barcelona sometime in the fall. So I can't wait to get back to Europe. I joined my wife on the journey of building Your Coach Health, so Marina, in January. So Your Coach Health was really born as a practice management solution. So think of this as kind of practice fusion, but for health coaches. And there's hundreds of thousands of health coaches in US alone, which is the market that we focus on. Though we have health coaches from Bahrain and Mongolia and many other places joining the platform. But kind of keeping the ear on the ground and listening to the market and the market pool, we've very quickly evolved what I would say in the last quarter into very much of a marketplace between health services and digital therapeutic companies and the health coaching network and community. Generally health coaches like to make their own hours. They create their own programs. And on the health services and digital therapeutic side, guess what? Human beings and empathy and behavior change and motivational techniques are still required, right? Surrounding your product or service. So in very short, we're now a marketplace between health services companies and the health coaches. And we've gotten some crazy tailwinds on this.
Perfect. And has your business been affected this past month in the way, did you find new use cases for Your Coach because of the pandemic?
It was very difficult to separate whether it was for the pandemic or the very much pre-pandemic. There's some other tailwinds that happened. So in January, the American Medical Association in US sort of officially announced that health coaches are now considered non-clinical part of the healthcare team. They've also released 3 test reimbursement codes, so they're not reimbursed yet, but it's for testing in the Veteran Affairs. And then, of course, the pandemic happened, where I think as us, the health consumers and health citizens, as Jane says in her book, we are all realizing that who got hit the most are people with different morbidities and comorbidities. And so a big tailwind of understanding your bodies and the focus on prevention and wellness all of a sudden came into the spotlight. So I would almost say, as a business, we had 2 key things. One is the tailwind of number of sessions, number of coaches signing up, et cetera. That's one. And then the second piece is really just the exposure on the prevention and wellness, which many of us have been sort of preaching that, for lack of a better term, for many years. As a key component of digital health.
Perfect. And so, yeah, I was actually very happy to have you here today because you've been fundraising during those past months during COVID. And I was curious, and also I'm sure the people here, like the startups, also looking for funding, curious to see how was that experience? Like, was it harder? Were the investors like more demanding, or were they asking for different things than before? Like, can you share that experience with us?
Yeah. So, I'll say, happily that we were able to do our first close. And that's actually one key hint for the startups is don't wait for the full round to close. Make sure that your lead and the early investors are able to get the cash into the company and keep moving, right? So that's one thing. Secondly, I think what I've seen actually, while on one side, maybe there was a few weeks to a month where the investors really sort of kind of, I wouldn't say shut down, but quieted down. But then, the VC industry is also a bit antiquated. But what I've seen, and this is from NFX and many other funds, very much more transparency was put into the process. You know where you stand. It's much quicker decision-making process, et cetera. To be fair, we started really raising sometime in early January, and we had our investors kind of generally lined up. And I think what it will also say is it depends on which stage you're in, right? So the pre-seed and seed, generally the investors invest in the team plus the belief in the market, and that varies between some prefer more on, is the market dynamics positive, right? Or is the team able to pull it off? I think we had the benefit of what I talked earlier around the tailwinds for the health coaching as an industry, and of course the believers as the early investors. Right? So I think we've seen positive. It did take much longer than we expected to even do the first close, but to be fair, it was a lot of kind of back and forth on just not even the term sheet, but some of the details and A&R and operating agreement and things like that just took longer. I think while we still have some money to fill the rest of the seed round, the pipeline is actually pretty strong for us on, in the due diligence. And now the key laser focus is obviously on execution. And one thing that I would say is many investors are asking how long of a runway you would have with this. And of course, one of the key things we need to do is tighten, where we spend, how we spend, really optimize where roughly you want about 18 to 24 months of a runway with the cash that you raise, right? Because it's still unpredictable. We were discussing this earlier, as a society, generally speaking, we're still in the midst of wave one. So, how long can you last this out? And depending on whether you're direct to consumer or B2B, I think all wallets are kind of somewhat shut down. Of course, there's winners and losers. I mean, look, all the video conferencing that's going on. So I'll pause right now if there's any other clarifications, because I can talk about the last 3 months experience for hours.
No, that's great. Thank you, Eugene, for that. But maybe we have some questions from the audience if they want to clarify on this topic. We can address that in the second part. Well, so Eugene, I put you in sandwich between a business angel and a venture capital VC. So can you share a bit from your point of view as an entrepreneur, as a startup who's been looking for funding, like the difference between business angel and VC? Where did you go and why did you choose that option? Like if we've got other people also considering raising money.
So again, as I mentioned earlier, obviously it depends on your stage, right? So I would kind of pull together the pre-seed and seed very much in the same boat. And this is, early days of the company, early days of really finding the market fit. And the people, and notice I don't say VC or business angels, the people that you want putting money in are the ones that can actually create this with you. And actually joking around with Marina, right? She's the CEO of Your Coach, and she's like, so let me get this straight. The people that are putting in money into us now, they're actually giving us money to basically work for and with us. And like, yes, exactly, right? Because I think at these early stages, it needs to be strategic to fill in the gaps of what we as a team don't have, either access to skills, backgrounds, network, et cetera. And certainly believers at this stage who are in for the long term with us and not a very short, turnaround for an ROI, right, at these stages. So I actually don't differentiate between business angels or early stage VC, because the goal for an entrepreneur at this early stage is actually get the right people around you, whether they put money in, as an angel or a fund.
Perfect. Okay, thank you very much, Eugene. So now we're going to go and talk to the VC today. Steve, welcome. Very happy to have you here with us today.
Thanks. Good afternoon.
So could you share a bit your experience those past months, or that's what we're saying? Eugene mentioned it as well. It seems like for you, the venture capitalists and investors, the situation was as unpredictable as it was for the startups, and many of you just had that kind of frozen moment where you were not too sure what was happening. So I'm like, yeah, but stop investment. Can you share your experience and how it impacted your business?
Sure. I think, from our perspective, first of all, we invest both in North America as well as in Europe. So what the unpredictability aspect, when you have a portfolio of companies that you need to follow on, the element is at first, what's going to happen with these companies? What's the outlook? And that whole outlook has changed. So there's a natural tendency to focus on the portfolio that you have, which then pulls attention away from the new or the future. Having said that a bit, though, we continued to see the same amount of deal flow and also continued to make a few investments, but those investments had been in the pipeline and with people we had already met and knew. I think one thing that gets very difficult, and it was alluded to, and I still believe it's the same even at later stages, but the teams are extremely important. And really getting to know the teams, because it's a long-term journey or relationship that's being put in, is paramount. And the COVID situation has made that a bit difficult because video, you can only go so far, and you can't really get to know people from that basis.
So I think you were in that meeting. Like Lisa Sunan, she published an article yesterday where she was mentioning the Half Excel lunch where you were at as well. And she said in that lunch, many investors said they invested without actually physically meeting the team.
Yeah, that's true. It's correct. I was in that lunch. It was an interesting discussion, investor-only lunch, with investors from both Europe and the US. There are a few that had, but I think generally these were also, a number of them on the investment side had known the entrepreneurs on that basis and then made the investment. Or they actually, it was not, it was doing quite some different ways of due diligence virtually. So it wasn't, just send me the deck, let's have a chat and we'll invest. There was a cautionary element, and I think people are, maybe the best way to describe it is there's an adjustment going on, and that is, yeah, you don't have to go do everything, in person, but there's still that degree of needing to meet people in person, and how to cope with the ability of not doing that during this period, I think has been handled in different ways.
Exactly. And so now if we look at new deal flow coming your way, do you have different expectations from the entrepreneurs? There was an article maybe like 2 weeks ago, some investors said they were asking like 3 additional slides to entrepreneurs related to COVID. So to understand how the solution were related to COVID, what was the backup solution, etc. Is it your case?
For us, no. We don't, it's not COVID specifically. We're an individual centric investor. And we really look for unique propositions in large underserved markets or underserved spaces. And so for us, it's really, is the proposition something of very high interest, and is the team quite strong? And so we haven't really changed any requirements of how we look at anything, because we're taking the longer term view. And that's over multiple years, more than 2, 3, even up to 5 to 7 time frame is what we're looking at. So that taking COVID that has come into play, I think is more of an opportunistic play versus what's the longer term market and what's happening. And that's, from our perspective, it hasn't really changed how we've looked at the market or addressed entrepreneurs.
And so talking about opportunistic, so I guess some of the deals that happened this past month, they were more opportunistic. Like also some people just adapted their solution or launched a solution on the market to address COVID. Do you think that that can like carry on like that? Can we like also we were looking at the first semester was record semester. Can we expect the second semester to be the same of 2020?
Yeah. Yeah, I think there's a couple of questions in that. And first of all, on the opportunistic side, I think what we saw a bit is also, while there's a record first semester, the stock market is back where it is on a broader term. And I don't think digital health or investment in total is immune to what the total economy or total market is doing on one hand. The second aspect, of course, is fundamentally you saw there was no other way to access health, which then drew high interest to an area that maybe the adoption times have been lagging in, and all of a sudden this was the only way to access health. So I think there is a bit of opportunism that has come into those numbers in the first half, you know, and it will be interesting to dig deeper into those numbers because a lot of the numbers are just out. And to be honest, I haven't reviewed the whole aspect of them. But I think you asked on the second half what's going to happen as well. And I think this is a little bit where, yeah, as an investor, I'd love to have a crystal ball. I mean, it would be fantastic, but I don't. But I can share with you what I think. I think what we is, you know, there's many uncertainties out there. And so there will still be some cautionary aspects, but I think digital health is now, you know, been shown the light. It's been utilized, and so what we will probably see is sustained adoption in this, which then will drive, I would say, more of a constant investment element. But I think, you know, there'll be a realism and there'll be some volatility in it. But if I look, I would say I wouldn't expect a big swing up or a big swing down. I would expect more of a stable element than what you've addressed in the first half.
Okay, well, that's very good news actually. And so maybe now you as an investor, if you've got some digital health startups who are looking at raising money now, or what advice could you give them, maybe taking into account the actual context?
Yeah, I think Eugene shared a bit of this in his past experience just recently, but I think number one is really think through who you need or want as an investor. What's your strategy and why? Be realistic, build the relationship, and know it's going to take a bit of time. You know, you have to focus on it. It's really about driving to a successful round, and that's it can naturally happen very quickly, but you shouldn't plan on that. And I think where the work is maybe lax or is not put in is on the front end, and really doing research on what investors will work for me, because in the end the relationship needs to be built and worked. In perhaps if you're much late stage, which wasn't addressed, that's a little bit different because it's all looked on the business parameters, in which in that situation you're also speaking to a very different set of investors than what you would be addressing in an earlier stage. And I primarily focus on late seed or A, and early B is where we would focus. So this is what I would suggest.
Okay, fantastic. Thank you so much, Steve. So now let's start this discussion. So if you have some question, please just drop them in the chat, and we're gonna address them. So now I would like to follow up on what Steve was saying now, and so the digital health has been really in the spotlight those past month, and a lot of individuals had to use it, yes, because it was the only way to access digital health. But now, do you think that having that experience and going back to kind of a normal reality, do you think that individuals are going to change the way that they engage with health in a sustainable way? Like, is telemedicine the new normal? Like, Steve, maybe do you want to start?
Yeah, sure. What I think will happen a bit is, so now both sides, providers and individuals, have been utilizing digital health, and in much greater use than has been the past. Now, that's going to be the norm for some, but I think, it's how an individual wants to access health. So I don't think it will change it for all. But what we will see is, I think, digital health now becoming part of the care pathway and an option towards that care pathway versus it was something being trialed. And that's where I see its place coming more into a norm as we move forward.
Okay.
Maybe
Eugene?
just I'll add a little bit, and since you had the startup health numbers up there, I think Steve and Unity have been saying this kind of decades, nothing happens, and then these are the weeks and a few months that just literally decades of stuff that we've been preaching just happened, right? And I think our friend Roberto Acione also says like 10 years in literally 10 days. So I think, a couple of points. One, I think people that were suspicious, non-believers, they had no choice. And, the fortunate part is that it takes about 30 to 60 days to build habits, right? And, there's different numbers. I think given the lockdowns have been more than 90 days, I would hope that majority of the people have built new habits around it. Two, and I've been saying this for many, many years, digital health is a buzzword. I've been very much saying it's really health in this new digital world. And I think some of the things will be tried. People will try to snap it back more due to politics and financial flows than the ease of use. So think about, just US, the fact that doctors can practice across state borders. For now, this is working great for everyone. The only reason they can snap back is, for more political reasons. So I think how we access health will stick around. That's my prediction. And I would want to hope that the second part, and I'll shut up, is that we as health consumers, also the ones that were not believers, now, wow, I can just do this telemedicine thing, or I can just use this digital therapeutic to help me through with the cognitive behavioral therapy. Amazing, right? So I think those habits are forming. And then literally the last thing, don't forget still on the human touch around health, right? And healthcare. That's still important. That's still needed. And I think this pandemic snapped us into the realization that it's not just technology, it's still an enabler. You still need human beings to help you through your problems. So.
Absolutely agree.
Yeah.
Actually, Gemma.
Can I add something, Lynn? Yeah, I cannot agree more. Yeah, Steve and Eugene, of course, having overburdened hospitals has forced people to go digital to access health. Also, the fear to the risk of cross-contamination, that has also been a lever for adoption. However, if I may add one more thing, I believe that COVID has also been a booster to grow concern for the sustainability of universal healthcare systems. And it is commonly acknowledged that digital health is one of the keys to sustainability. So in addition to the levers for adoption of digital health that we had before, these were like the very committed people who had already realized what high percentage of our health is contributed by behavior. They would use digital health tools. Also, people who had realized how heavy, how tough is the shortage of healthcare workers around the world. They would also start using digital health tools. But now I think that this new element of becoming conscious on how digital health can contribute to the sustainability of universal health care and how much we need universal health care in the context of pandemics, that's also one additional lever.
Exactly. Yeah. Thanks, Gemma, for that. And so I think there's also the other way of the coin, you know, so we talk about the users using the solution, but there's also the providers. So when we had one of the first BHH series that we had, it was at the very beginning when during that frozen moment where we're not really sure what was happening, investors were not really investing, like a bit on hold. And we had a question like that in one of the session, asking one of the business angel that was on the panel, if sales could actually compensate investment. And what we've seen this past month, and a lot of the digital health startups could actually push their solution on the market, offering their services, especially telemedicine solution, for free. And then the question is, after that free trial, will the providers actually carry on using those solutions? Are they going to buy like licenses, products, etc.? So what is your view on that? Do you think that the providers are going to buy in, like pharma company, insurance, hospitals? Gemma, do you want to start?
All right. So, I mean, hopefully, yes. I mean, US and Germany are examples to follow, and maybe also Japan and Taiwan. I mean, someone has got faith. Look at the upfront that Shionogi has paid Akili this week for the rights to commercialize the digital therapeutics on ADHD and autism spectrum. So someone's got faith. And I think, yes, payers will be ready to start exploring in this direction. I think, yes, my answer in short is yes.
Okay. Steve, what
Maybe
do you think?
I'll add to.
Yeah, Eugene, no, go Eugene.
You go ahead, Eugene.
So I think we can't look at those type of players that you listed and with the one lens, right? So if I break this down, and of course not all the parts of the ecosystem, but pharma has just been, as an industry was talking about, e-detailing, multi-channel marketing and virtual clinical trials. The last, I'll call it 6 months, have snapped pharma into, holy shit, we really got to do this, right? And they are doing it. If you look at the hospital system, certainly, to optimize, as Gemma mentioned earlier, there's a shortage of workers, have been, and now even further. But the question becomes, of course, especially in the US, how many of these hospital systems will survive, right? Just from a, profitability perspective, can they afford those tools? The likelihood is that they'll leverage some of these digital tools. And then if I look at the insurers, and again, just because I'm parked here in the US now, and with your coach, we're very much looking in the US market and focus. I hate to say it, but insurers have not paid out so many claims because nobody has been going to the hospital with, and it's not like cardiovascular disease disappeared. So they're sitting on a pile of cash that in theory gives them some time to actually snap back in and look at how do they invest more strategically into some of this. So, trying to break this up because every unique perspective from parts of sub-industry.
So maybe just a parenthesis of what you just said, Eugene. So we already prepared the next BHH series. So when we come back after holidays, and it will be exactly on that. So insurance companies and how, what will change for them in the future. Sorry, that was a parenthesis. Steve,
cool.
Do you want to add?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think quite a bit has been covered, and it's well said. I would just jump in. So I won't address and I agree. It's the broader, the providers, the the hospitals to so on. But maybe a few notes on the payers, because I think over the last already few years, there's been a shift on that side. And the shift has been, and it depends on which market and how competitive that market is. But that shift has been more towards offering more of a solution and jumping in and even supporting a triage. You see that through a lot of the new digital insurers that have come out. So to Eugene's point, I think also, yes, they haven't been paying out on one hand, but what they have done is increased some of the payouts gone on the digital side that hadn't been happening. And my aspect of this is, how do you give something to somebody and then say, we're going to take it away? So I don't think that is going to happen so easily. The larger question, I think, on this is, does this now, to Eugene's point on where they're going to invest it, accelerate their investment into the digital aspects? And I think that's probably a likely scenario if we get into the sustainability issues that were mentioned. And they're going to take more of a lead around this, given the P&L constraints that the providers, the hospitals, are really being hit with.
Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you, Steve. Now I would like to take a question from the audience. Steve, it's for you. I think it's a very good question because I was asked the same last week, so very curious to know your answer. So as an investor in digital health, do you non-regulated, so looking at CE mark and FDA, digital health solutions interesting to invest? So do you think regulation requirements somehow the value of the solution? Like, would you invest in a solution that's not CE mark or FDA mark?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. It varies by investor. That's what I'll state right up front. This is back to who are you addressing and why, and will that investor, is this something they can take into account? There is a difference between Europe and the US when it comes to regulatory, and FDA has traditionally been pretty slow, stringent, and therefore there's many investors that if you don't have regulatory approval, don't talk to me, because they've been heavily burned. So that, I think, is changing somewhat, but the general tone is, are you really speaking to, an investor who is more mid or late stage, or somebody that is more coming in earlier and help drive the company? And I don't think, from myself, I have invested in companies pre-regulatory, but I've been investing in digital health now for 8 to 9 years. I think, even as Eugene said, it's a buzzword, and before it was that buzzword. So it was maybe a pioneer in doing this. And I think now we're starting to see the regulatory environment take some jumps forward with what we've seen in Germany. And that is when you start getting country competition moving, changes the scenery. And so it's a moving target at this point in time. That's how I would address it. But first and foremost, know your investor.
Eugene and Jima, maybe do you want to add something to that from your experience, or?
I totally agree with Steve.
Okay.
So I don't know if I can, kind of stepping back into, I think typically, there's the question is on the adoption, and I think, and I'll call out the Digital Therapeutics Alliance, actually, because I know I've been sort of pressuring today. The definition of the digital therapeutic is, yes, evidence-based and also reimbursable. My question always is, as long as it's evidence-based, the reimbursing quote unquote, or buying could still be by the consumer or health citizen, right? So the question is the proposition scientifically valid? And that's where a good investor sees and drives this forward and believes that it could be scientifically validated and ultimately FDA or CE mark approved, right? So, but I think there's multiple paths to it, and some businesses and startups choose to go direct for it. Some go in a different path, and it just depends on the investor, as Steve said.
Exactly. So something also the EU Commission, they launched, one of those Horizon 2020 program, and this one's actually because they said there's a lot of solutions that were developed recently to address COVID-19. But then the hospitals or the providers demand side, they don't want to use those solutions because they are not CE marked. They're not certified. So they're actually putting in place a program to help those startups to get that regulation, which I think is really great. And we should hear more about that in the coming month. Now, I would like to address another topic, which is like the funds dedicated to minorities. So like ReRock, for instance, is dedicated to women, and we'll see like several similar funds those past years. And there's also funds dedicated to Black founders, like we've seen a lot in the US those past month. Also, I guess some already existed, some were created because of all the movement, what's happening in the US. How important do you think it is to have those funds like really focused on a specific group? Gemma, do you want to tell us why it's important to have a fund dedicated to women?
Happy to take that one. So more investment in women means more innovation and reach in the industry, means more economic growth and more social benefit for the whole nation. I mean, when you look at, there is this publication, the Morgan Stanley estimations, it literally says that investors are missing out on business worth 4 trillion in revenue annually by not investing more in female and minority-led enterprises. It's all said. It is very important.
Exactly. Eugene, maybe from
I'm just going to be very, very quick on it. The short answer is yes, absolutely. And it doesn't mean that the focus is not somewhere else. It's just raising the focus and a fire under what's been missing, right? I mean, there's no other thing than a yes.
Could it be seen as opportunistic as well? Like I've seen like those past month with the Black community funds, for instance, say, yeah, we're doing it to support, but do they really mean to support, or is it just to get some likes?
So I'll tell you. I mean, obviously, when things broke out in Minneapolis, right? There are companies that literally within minutes or hours released some statements and emails, right? And this is when you can feel that particular company leadership team really believes in it. And then it started trickling in over weeks and months. And it's like, this is just a pretend checkbox that, we need to do this for PR. And that's when you can tell, right, the leadership of the company, what's opportunistic and what's actually meant, wholeheartedly. And I honestly, after like 3 days, I started deleting those emails because to me, those were just more a PR stunt than anything else.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that's exactly what I meant. Steve?
Yeah, well, I have to, it's a yes. We have to have a clean sweep on this one. But no, it's yes. And I think first I want to take a step back and say, when we talk about venture capital, it's still emerging. And what is venture capital, or what is that whole investment on a global basis? It's still developing and maturing. And I think, what's been stated is absolutely true. Diversity brings better returns. There's not a doubt about that. The aspect has been where money has been situated has been pocketed. And I think as that flattens out more over time, that access will be given to more parties, and different minority groups and so on. It won't be just slated one way. Now, do we need this? Yes, because you need to kickstart and put a focus on it. And so I think that brings in an element of why it's needed. Does it need to be there longer term? Hopefully not, because if society is doing its role, money should find the best opportunities, and that's irregardless of race or anything else. And so, yeah.
And Eugene, in your case, so having a women CEO, did you approach like some funds like that dedicated to women or no?
No, and actually, I mean, Marina will, can speak on her behalf on it. Her stance is, I'm a person and I kick ass, irrespective of women or not. So, and she does kick ass, and I'm not saying it because I'm married to her for 21 years, but so we did not actually. She was a little bit hesitating on that side of the platform, meaning just there's actually been some companies and pitch because you're a woman, and she sort of declined, saying like, I'm just a kick-ass CEO, which she is.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd just like to add one more point and dovetail on what Eugene said, and that's a little bit what isn't good is people coming in for the PR. So what I caution on, I mean, what Gemma's been doing is great. This is long term. It's out there. It's for women. But you need to be careful, I think, of the PR front and is it really active? Is it really doing something? Versus this is for PR because we need to check the box. And this is for all the wrong reasons on innovation. That's not true innovation, and it's not really driving deeper change that needs to happen. So I just wanted to put an exclamation point behind that.
That's very important. Yeah, thanks for pointing it out. Now I would like to ask you a question that we had last week, and I think it was a very good question, and I feel it's very relevant for today's discussion as well. It's around mentorship, because I feel like Gemma, you are as business angel, and Steve as venture capital. I feel you've got that mentor profile when you talk to startups, to entrepreneurs. So how do you how important is mentorship for you? And also curious to know if you have mentors yourself, and if you can tell us a bit more about that. Eugene?
So I'm always, I kind of joke around, even a psychiatrist needs a psychiatrist, right? And so the moment you admit that you know everything, you're done as a human being, right? So I think mentors are absolutely key, and you need to surround yourself with, again, things that you're missing, everything from knowledge to honestly even like a bit of a pick-me-up, right, on daily basis. Actually, I will point, well, on the screen at least, one of the mentors is right here. So Steve, I do rely quite heavily. And again, for different sort of slices of my life, I think you cannot do without mentors. But also, I would also say I was always a big fan of mentees because, not just because I want to help people, but I also learn things from where the expectation is from mentee that I will mentor them. I always learn from the mentees back, right? And just sort of rewinding back in my career, I've actually learned quite a few things from the younger generation continuously.
I agree. That's this reverse mentoring program that I find very useful and interesting. Yeah. Gemma, what about you? Do you have mentors?
Very little to add on the beauties of having a mentor and being a mentor and receiving actually a wealth of advice from mentees, nothing to add on that. About myself, my own experience with mentors, I do recall one time when I transitioned from clinical research, that's the field where I had spent 20 plus years in my life. I transitioned to my new job. I did have a mentor who helped me a lot. So I did keep that mentor way beyond that period, the transitioning period. And actually, as of today, as we speak, we're still in touch. I do not have like one single mentor for my work in digital health right now. Although I am a newcomer, I only joined the digital health field about 2 years ago, having spent, as I said, 20 plus years doing clinical development. Although I was always interested in digitizing clinical trials and providing a human experience through technology, both to the patient participating in the trial and a worthwhile professional experience to the investigator participating in the trial through technology. So in a way, this kind of led me to digital health. Anyhow, I think that after I heard what Eugene said, I'm getting myself a mentor. So Steve, get ready.
Oh my gosh.
It's a very good thing, I can confirm.
Okay.
Steve, so what about you?
Well, I'll maybe take it from an angle of as I look to, I think any great company that I've invested in, it's really been, I don't know if it's really called a mentor, but a partnership. And I seriously mean partnership. It's not, and these types of relationships and investing in tend to work out the best financially, going the furthest, so on and so forth. And I think, from that basis, it's always a give and take. And, I think it's really, that's part of, as entrepreneurs look for, when you talk about finding smart money, let's call mentorship part of smart money. And I think it's been stated, there isn't anybody that will know the absolute all, but I think what is key is to have not too many mentors around, because then there's too many voices coming at you on where you need to go that may not be aligned on that basis. So, but I think in building great companies, if you talk to most entrepreneurs out there, they've had mentors supporting them in one way or another. And, oftentimes, if it's not me as an investor you want to confide in or work closely with, okay, but let's find somebody that you do, because it's not easy being a CEO, entrepreneur in a startup. And that is an aspect that's highly needed.
Exactly, agree. So as Eugene, you mute. Eugene, unmute yourself.
I'm okay. I just wanted to add one thing, because I think a lot of times we as human beings like to surround ourselves with people that obviously you're friendly with, you think the same way. And I think a key aspect of a good mentor is that will give you shit also and challenge the hell out of you, right? This is not around just like pacifying and things will be okay and you can do this. It's really challenge almost like every gene in your DNA that you are missing. So I think just wanted to add that it's not about only being kind of on the friendly terms and helping through.
Yeah, absolutely agree. Yeah, that's critical, essential. Yeah. So as a closing remark, like we've come to the end of this session now, would like to ask you, so if we look back, so the question we wanted to ask is, will 2020 be the new record year for digital health investment? So we kind of settled that it will remain more or less the same for like second semester, but like more concretely, I just want you to look at your crystal ball, in your own opinion. Where do you think the money is going to flow? Will there be some changing? What will be the hot topics for the second semester of 2020? Eugene?
I think we'll see a little bit of a herd mentality, and I actually think the second half will be even stronger than the first, just because the way a lot of these are counted, we'll see a lot more, B, C, and D deals around everything from telemedicine to remote monitoring. We'll see probably one, maybe two companies go public also in the space. So I think we'll see a lot more activity in the later stages of a company, and that will actually tip the numbers over. That's my crystal ball.
Perfect. Gemma, what is yours telling you?
All right, my crystal ball also goes for remote monitoring and telemedicine. I think, yes, investment will go up. I mean, patient journeys have changed for an obligation. There was no choice, as it was said earlier. But now I think they have changed forever. So a combination of face-to-face and remote will stay. And examples of hot areas, since you asked, I think mental health, also sleep quality, but mental health will be a very hot area.
Perfect. Steve, can you share your mental with us?
The crystal ball, huh?
Yes.
I think, there will be, telehealth still is not, let's say, been pushed all the way out, so that will continue. Although I think what we'll see is money starting to move to those areas maybe that have been ignored outside of telehealth, because there's an aspect of it's now real, so the adoption curves are starting to be seen. I still am going to stick with, I don't see a big up in overall investment because of too many uncertainties. At the same time, given there's such a high need and digital health has come out in the past 3 months, I think we'll see the money continuing to flow. But specific areas, yeah, mental health will also. I have been in a mental health company, so I think there's a few areas on that.
Perfect. So startups out there, take notes. Those are the area will be more like maybe easier to find some money. So that concludes the end of the panel today. So thank you so much to everybody for your insights, for your great tips. Thank you for being with us today, for attending the event. And thank you for having been with us like all those past 3-4 months, like since the beginning, all those like 15 BHH series that we've been doing. Like we wouldn't have carried on if it wasn't for you, for so many people being with us every week. So really, thank you very much. And as I was saying, we'll be back second week of September, so the 9th of September, 6 p.m. And we're going to talk about the future of the insurance sector. So thank you, everybody. Have a great summer and see you in a few weeks. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.